Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit to stop cash withdrawals from all public accounts. Court stops DSS from arresting Nigeria's central bank governor Godwin Emefiele. Germany hands over 20 looted Benin bronzes to Nigeria. Welcome. Still on Politics HQ tonight, commercial banking activities resume in Ethiopia's Tigray. Again, Sudanese security forces tear gas pro-democracy protesters. I'm Sulaiman Aledeh. Tonight on Politics HQ, I'll be speaking with Professor Ken Ife. He's a development economist and lead consultant, ECOWAS Commission. And pretty much later, Ayobami Oyalowo, political and development economist, will be on the show. Stay with us here on Politics HQ. Well, Nigeria's 2023 election is believed to be a four-horse race, but there are two powerful parties many expect to battle headlong. The APC and the PDP have been at each other's jugular since the beginning of the campaigns, and is not the first of its kind. Now, this has become a regular feature in Nigeria's electoral campaigns, and they are not done yet. The upcoming general elections will leave Nigerians with critical choices, and both parties have presented experienced politicians. How convincing these candidates are to Nigerians will be seen in the coming weeks. Still, if we've learned anything from previous elections, a Nigerian election without an incumbent on the ballot is never predictable. The PDP wants power again. The APC is fighting to remain, and they both have the little matter of the Labour Party and New Nigeria People's Party to contend with. The 2023 election is delicately poised, but again, one key thing that has to come in has to do with what we have described as the cashless politics. Did I hear you say policy? But of course, it will be something that many politicians and even economists have been speaking of as we move. Just yesterday, our guest posited that if the CBN were to retweak the cashless policy, it must come after the election. Joining us tonight, Professor Ken Ife. He's a development economist and lead consultant, ECOWAS Commission, joins us live on Politics HQ to make sense of what cashless policy is about and perhaps see how this may be affecting Nigeria's democracy. Good to see you, Professor Ken, and thanks for your time as always.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, the thing is, we're speaking politics, but again, sometimes when you talk about politics, you also be looking at what politicians and policies ultimately will bring to affect the economy. First, let's start by speaking about the Nigeria's bank's cashless policy. It's not the first time that that policy has been introduced to the Nigerian people, but it looks to a lot of people as if now trying to make this truly work has caused a lot of, discomfort around the policy. But first, what's a cashless policy about?
Well, we've had notice of this for the last 10 years because the central bank piloted this in Lagos, piloted it in Abuja, and then on the basis of that, reduced the amount you can withdraw to 500,000 for companies. So it has been, except that this time round, there is the coincidence of the Naira redesign of the Nigerian Naira. Then there is the backdrop of intense speculation on our Naira. Then you also have the political arrangement gearing up, and a lot of Naira is being used. And we have other issues, much more odious, which is the level of fake currencies that are in the system, and the amount of money that are actually outside our boundaries, within the continent. So there are all of these coming together, and suddenly heaven, it's got to, so everybody's now worried as if this is the first time it's hitting the table.
So now you say everyone is worried, and as you rightly said, it's not the first time there were test cases using these states as highlighted by you, Lagos, Abuja, and even Rivers State to test the cashless policy. But again, before we go into why people, why the brouhaha, or why the opera, perhaps again, let's dig in deep again to make this more lucid. For some, they still think that perhaps, well, there must be something in place by the bank before the policy can be actually made a holistic one. For instance, they still think that the electronic system of banking in Nigeria perhaps should be more strengthened. Let us in on what you think should have been done, if there is any, Professor Ken.
A lot of things have already been done. For example, we have nearly 2 million, what do you call it, agency banking, POS systems. They are all out there.
Did I hear you say 2 million?
Yes, there are almost 2 million agency banking and then POS and all of those out there in every hook and cranny. During the 2020 COVID-19, that was when we expected the most impact on our financial system. But because the central bank has invested so much in the agency banking and all these POS and all that cashless and what do you call it, the mobile money and all of that, people were comfortably sitting at home during the lockdown. We're doing even more transactions. So the effect of it was that the banks recorded 15% growth rate consistently for 2020 and 2021, while in many other countries, they were under stress. Some were failing, some were being taken over, but we showed resilience. Now, secondly, last year, Nigeria was number 6 in the world in the electronic transactions. We were recording 1.8 billion electronic transactions a year. The only people ahead of us are India, China, South Korea, but we're actually higher than America. America was doing 1.2 billion. Brazil was doing 1.6 billion. Nigeria was doing 1.8 billion. And this year, just a year after, we are doing 3.5 billion transactions, financial transactions, which means about 200 trillion naira that is being turned over. So, he can't say that we haven't been prepared. We are more than prepared for this day. It's just that people have other reasons to panic, and I cannot see those.
And again, that's one of the reasons we have, an expert like yourself to speak to us, perhaps because a lot of people are still trying to put a finger on why the opera, and perhaps maybe that's one of the key things we should be looking at now. In the next few weeks, specifically in less than 3 months, Nigeria will be going into an election, dubbed as one of the most, fiercely fought. And before now, a whole lot of people had also thought, pundits have thought, that this election would be one of the biggest in terms of big spenders. But we're not seeing all of that. Now, help us make sense of when you talk about democracy, you're an economist, no doubt. But again, you're also a Nigerian. We've seen what Nigeria has also gone through in its election cycle, money politics, vote buying. By the way, INEC, your colleague professor there, is also still speaking, talking about how to solve that. Do you think that this also would mean some big plus for us as we go into the election with this policy?
I think it will work. Let me explain.
Go ahead.
The monetary aggregate framework, the macroeconomic monetary aggregate framework, did not envisage that if you have 3.3 trillion naira in circulation, that 2.6 trillion of that is going to be hiding under the pillow or under the sink. None of it wasn't envisaged at all. I hear people saying that it's my money, I can do anything I like with it. It's not your money. That money belongs to central bank. It's like your passport. If you think it's your money, you can do anything with it, then go and spread it in a social event and stampede it and see whether you won't get arrested by the IFCs. It's like your international passport. That's the property of federal government. If you misuse it, the federal government will withdraw that passport from you. It's different from your birth certificate. It's different from your degree certificate, which is yours. So we need to be responsible in the way we use the currency. And there are different kinds of exchanges, monies, different types of money used for different purposes. And this particular one, cash, has a purpose. The volume of cash in the system is graduated and calibrated based on the productivity of the economy. As we get more productive and there's more need, the bank prints more money. And there are many other issues that could arise, especially inflation, where the bank may be tempted or be minded to withdraw a lot of cash out of the circulation. Because if you look at a classic case, we don't know how much of this cash in the system are fraudulent, counterfeit. We don't know how much of this. We don't know how much of this money is outside the shores of Nigeria. For example, I work with ECOWAS, and we all go around all the 15 member states all the time. We don't get PTA and BTA from central bank when we are traveling to those places. So what do? Some of us will carry that naira in our pocket, and you go to Ghana, go to the market, Balogu market in Ghana, you use naira to pay. You come to the airport, you pay, hotels, you pay. So there's a lot of Nigerian naira out in circulation in these 14 countries, without a doubt. So we are the number 2 currency outside their CFA and the other currency. Nigerian currency is the number 2. But we don't know the volume that is out there. We know also in the northern frontiers, there are about 100 million Francophone citizens, countries there that are trading with us actively. The northern Cameroon, you have the Niger, Chad, Mali, Benin. They're all trading. They're not trading with dollar, neither with their CFA. It is still the same naira that they're trading with. And then you know that the classic definition of inflation is that too much money chasing fewer goods and services. You don't know how much of those other fake monies that are involved in that whole process of chasing money. Secondly, you don't even know what's this whole cash doing. What's the cash doing out there? Is either being used, some of them could be used in buying dollar and trading in dollar and then overheating the economy. They're also there used in laundered money, and there's so many things going on there that we need to change this bloody currency.
So in other words, Professor Ife, it then means that there's a security implication to all of this, having so much cash out there without the country or the bank having knowledge of the amount of cash out there.
Correct. On account how many policemen have been killed or security officers have been killed because they are guarding cash, guarding people carrying cash around. Look at how many people that have been they've been attacked in their houses and for armed robbery. All of them are chasing this cash that we are dumping. You keeping many lives at risk because of this cash that we are laundering and putting everywhere. And then also there's also the case that if you control the cash that is in circulation, then it is going to help the country get a bit more efficient in introducing more policies, that are meant to improve, bring more technology into the service. You see what technology has done, investment in technology. We now have we've licensed the MTN and Airtel to help in VAT collection. We have more of these companies, the payment system, USSD technology, so they don't even need to have Android phone to transact. Even with your Nokia to Nokia in the village, you can just use USSD to do transaction. So there's so many investments in payment infrastructure that are happening, that are continuing to benefit us simply by making sure that we can do businesses and increase the velocity of money just by imbibing more and more of these technologies. So one is to reduce the risk involved in having the heavy amounts of cash out there. Two is that this cash, can you imagine the 2.6 trillion that is out there? If it was available to the banks, you will be earning interest in this money. If it is available to the bank will be lending them to more businesses to create jobs. So explain to me, what is that money doing where it is sitting? It should be earning interest for you if it is in the banking sector. Or if you used it to buy.
But why do you think people?
Bills?
But why do you think we have so much outside the banking system?
No, this is what I'm telling you. That a lot of them are being used for spurious transactions. Some of them are laundered money that they couldn't account for, and then they are using them to trade. Okay, why is dollar going up every day? It's because of the demand and supply. People have this cash, they use it to transact on this buying and selling dollar. They use it for all kinds of things. But you have to think about the risk inherent in having those large volumes of cash. So it becomes difficult for the central bank to drive down inflation using monetary policy instruments. If you consider that near over 30% of our population are not banked, and then you have only just 1/3 of the supposed cash in the vaults of the bank, commercial banks, Now, don't forget, the banks already put 32.5% of their money in cash reserve ratio sitting there with the central bank and not earning them any interest. Then they are required to keep 30% of their cash for liquidity purposes. Then what else is left to the bank? They just left with 1/3 of money that will be in circulation. And then when the central bank comes in to mop up cash, it is still the commercial bank money that they can see. So they'll keep on taking those cash, and then the bank will now have very small money to lend. And so they have to lend them at a very high interest rate. But whereas if these monies are back into their vault, then they can reduce the rates that they are charging, subject, of course, to the NPR rate. But even with the NPR rate, their ultimate lending rate is still going to be higher because they have very little cash in their possession.
Okay, so Professor Ife, let me jump in here. Apologies to butt in. Let me quickly jump in here. I'm trying to look at two big headlines. One in a week ago, talking about court declining requests to stop the CBN cash withdrawal limit policy, as well as the currency. That's a big plus for the CBN going through the courts. And of course, the NFIU has just said that it hopes to stop governments and agencies from withdrawal by January till after the election, apart from the salaries. Now, paint for us a picture, because there seemed to be a pushback, just as the central bank, the NFIU, and some other agencies are saying that, wait a minute, let's give the CBN policy some breather and allow it to work, and let's see how it pans out. Some others, politicians in this case, have also cried out saying that it will impede on their logistics as they move into this election.
I'm not sure that holds any water, because the politicians just want to have their way. This policy hasn't, we still have January, end of January for this to, the panic is simply, they just need to have their cash and do what they need to do with their cash. There's nothing you can do with cash you cannot do with transfer, unless it is illegitimate. You tell me what it is, just mention one thing that you can do that you cannot do by transfer, but you have to carry cash and put everybody's life at risk. Or is it the ransom that you pay? Why don't you try and pay ransom through electronic transfer and see whether you cannot catch the culprit? So what is it that you have to, is it Christmas present? What is it that is the bags of rice and salt that you are going to distribute to the people, voters? You can still pay for those. You can pay for those lorry loads with money, with financial transfers. What is the big deal that people do not want to use? If it is legitimate, then use the transfer. I don't know what it is that you can buy, you can settle, that you cannot settle with a money transfer.
You know, they've always said, when you try to work a system, especially in a democracy, there's usually a fight back. Now, this is an election year for Nigerians, or perhaps we can say 2022 is the eve of an election year. What are those things? Because you've just said, your soundbite now is that, tell me those things you can't do, electronically, that you must need cash. But speak to us on what exactly is happening now, Professor Ife. Looking at what is happening, politicians and the central bank, and the news about whether or not some court judgment, has worked in favor of the central bank. How does this work when you have an issue that borders on security, as serious as security, hovering on a nation's central bank chief? Does it have a ripple effect on the country's economy or policies, so to speak?
I'm not sure. Now, look, the policy says you can take up to 100,000 naira per person. If you trust your wife, or if your wife trusts the husband can go and get, or the wife can go and get another 100,000 naira. If you trust your son and your daughter, they can also go and get another 100,000 naira. So if you have 400,000 naira a week, is that not enough? If not, then do the transfer. Then it tells to the companies, you can take 500,000. If you have 2 or 3 companies, you can get 500 multiplied by 3, 1.5 million. Otherwise, pay the things by transfer. Then it says, but anyway, in any case, you can take any amount you want. You can pay 5% interest tax on it. What I'm not very sure is whether that money is going to government, that 5%, or whether it's going to central bank, or whether it's going to commercial bank, or whether there's a formula to share that. But I'm sure the government would like to get some of that money, you know. And the other thing, of course, is this. If you notice, government revenue has been benefiting significantly from electronic transfers. Look at any time you transfer money, you will see a charge that follows the transfer. So government is getting money. So it does mean that 2.6 trillion that is hanging out there, as soon as they get mobile, government will begin to earn money from that.
Now, let's see if we can actually close on this. As we move into the election year, and the pushback hasn't actually stopped, and it's still very much there, making headlines against the central bank governor and the central bank as an institution. What can you say to specifically the political class, the lawmakers who are still pushing vehemently against this good, as you highlighted, policy of the central bank? What's the message?
I think they're just crying more than the bereaved, because you cannot. It's politically motivated. Because if you look at first of all, the argument was that the people in the rural area will not have enough time to go and launch their money in the bank. And I'm saying, which of them? How many people in the rural area have more than 500,000 naira or 200 or 1 million in the rural area that you don't have a POS in front of them? And how many days will it take? 90 days, 60 days for them? So I didn't see that didn't make any sense. So there is a political motivation that I think is somewhat overriding. It is not based on the reality of how many of our villagers are going to suffer, or the MSMEs. I know there will be, inevitably, there will be a slowdown in the velocity of informal transaction. There will definitely be a slowdown. But this is what happens. When you meet that obstacle, we have acrobatic mentality in this country, they will overcome. Definitely. Even the politicians that are crying, a lot of them would have bought dollars and want to go and share dollars, because already they have dollarized our economy. And I know that they have other ways and means. But let's not just disrupt the economic system, because people have all that notion that heaven will fall by January 31st. And I didn't see that.
Now that you just spoke about the dollars, help us here. The moment the CBN came with the policy to change the naira, and of course with the cashless policy, all of a sudden there seemed to be some kind of gain by the naira. Help us make sense of what actually went down with that policy.
Okay, when the policy came in, immediately there were so many first of all, I told you that speculation is the biggest thing, apart from insecurity. Speculation is the biggest thing hurting the value of the naira, because people are speculating that the naira will collapse, will devalue next month. So buy dollar, so that you can sell it off and make a huge percentage, 20-30%, just by sitting down and buying the dollar. But it wasn't quite working out the way it is. So when another spanner was thrown in the works, so many things had to happen. Those who are carrying laundered money had to think about how to get it into the financial system, or should we just buy dollars and wait, and then later we can sell the dollar or use the dollar to settle. Then there are the diaspora, people who are planning to come for Christmas or send things home. They were to buy. They started buying dollar, buying naira for family people, because they needed to. The money has gone up very high because of speculation. So they started buying. And of course, that tempo will slow down as we approach Christmas, because after Christmas, those who have come home will have to look for dollar to go back. So and then you have people going on holiday requiring dollar. So they had to buy dollar to holiday. Some are paying school fees, some have all this. So there is so much demand. And then all the people who are importing goods to be sold for Christmas needed the dollar to pay for the goods. Now, at this moment, the goods must have arrived. Otherwise, it's too late. So they will not be needing dollar that much. So you have all these are all the things that happened. That's why the dollar rose very rapidly to 920 naira, and then quietly came down. Of course, there was an intervention from the central bank, but it came down. It couldn't continue that trajectory, because it's the same thing as we are saying now. People will begin to see the end of this. It's not going to be as bad as the prophets of doom are predicting.
Well, overall, the Central Bank of Nigeria isn't out to making the country suffer, because we've seen quite a number of comments of, on social media. Some are saying that the central bank is the cause of Nigeria's woes, economic woes. Professor Ife?
No, that's not true. I'll tell you, this is a policy that is in the best interest of our country. And what I do know is that everybody have actually agreed that the policies are the correct one, but that the time is too short. That they've now moved from the time is too short to, the amount you're asking us to take from the bank is too small. So, but I haven't seen people arguing anymore that this is not the right policy for the country. I haven't seen that now. They're all shifting grounds and now saying that, look, increase the amount that we can draw. Or if I carry 1 billion and put in the bank, give me back 1 billion new currency. And that goes back to square one. So the argument is shifting. But there is a general consensus that this is really good for the country. Why would you say you cannot change the design of our currency? This currency carries a lot of electronic features that will make it trackable. So it's going to be bad news for those who are kidnapping people and collecting this money, because it can be tracked. You cannot see the electronics inside it, but there are systems that will pick them up. And so people are just looking at colored and not colored. No, there's more there. There's an electronic asset inside there that gives it that potentiality. So, but by and large, the argument has actually been won on whether it is on the best interest of the country. It's just the exigency of whether it is enough or is not, or the timing is not enough. Let's wait. Let's wait. Nothing is cast in stone. I know that the BDCs might well be complaining. I know that some of the cash transfers may be complaining, but there's still time. And these policies, as I see it, are not cast in stone. When the time arrives and the bank management considers some of the potential challenges, they will probably extend or probably increase, or probably they will do something. But then they cannot be stampeded by parochial interests and all the political pressures that we are having.
Well, Professor Ken Ife, many thanks for speaking with us. We do hope that we'll bring you back again to make sense of this policy as we see how it pans out in the coming days, specifically before the elections.
Thank you very much.